I found myself uninvited from my own mom's birthday party, all because I supposedly didn't look presentable next to my sister's boyfriend. Funny thing is, the guy was actually working under me, I was his boss. That didn't matter though. My dad looked me dead in the eye and told me, if you insist on coming back home, then don't bother calling me your father. 3 weeks later, on my mom's birthday, the power, water, and internet in their house all went dead. But let me back up and walk you through the whole story, maybe you'll recognize a little of yourself in it. My name's Ryan. I'm 30 years old, living in a quiet little town about 40 minutes outside Seattle. My mornings are simple, I brew a cup of coffee, flip on the weather report, and drive less than 10 minutes to work. I co-founded a small tech company that focuses on sustainable energy. Most folks, including my own family, don't really understand what I do. They picture me tightening bolts and fixing machines all day, which isn't the case, but I've never felt like explaining otherwise. Whenever someone asks about my parents or my younger sister Jessica, I just smile a little and say, it's been a while since we talked. That's the truth, and that's usually where I leave it. No big explanations, no excuses. It's been over 2 years since I had any real contact with them, no calls, no texts, no visits on holidays or birthdays. Just a long, empty silence, like the connection was cut and no one made the effort to fix it. I used to believe family was everything. That belief ended 2 years ago, on my mom's birthday. Back then, about 3 weeks before the big day, I booked time off work and planned a short trip home. The idea was simple, arrive early, stay a few days, and help out with preparations, same as always. Nothing unusual, just tradition. As soon as I booked the trip, I called home. Dad picked up after just a couple rings. I told him, casual as could be, hey, I'll be home 2 days early. If you need me to grab anything or lend a hand, just say the word. At first, his response was vague, hesitant. Then his voice changed, heavier, like he was carrying something he didn't want to say. Finally, he let it out. Ryan, maybe it's best if you don't come home this year. I figured he was just worried about my schedule. I laughed a little and said, it's fine, Dad. I've got it all worked out. Really, it's no trouble. But then came another long pause. This time his voice was firm and cold. Jessica's bringing her boyfriend. He's a manager. He speaks well, carries himself properly. And your job, well, it's just not something easy to talk about. It'd be better if you didn't come. I felt heat climb up the back of my neck, my heartbeat pounding harder. I gripped my coffee mug tighter. What the hell did you just say? My voice cracked with anger. You're really saying that to me right now? He didn't back down. He didn't soften his words or take them back. Instead, he shot back, plain and sharp, if you come home, you'll embarrass the whole family. And if you insist on coming anyway, don't call me your father. Then he hung up. Just like that. I lowered the phone slowly, my hand shaking, sticky with sweat. The apartment around me was silent. No TV, no footsteps, just me standing there, stunned, staring at nothing. His words echoed in my head over and over, as if stuck on repeat, if you come home, you'll embarrass the whole family. Don't call me your father. For a second, I thought maybe I misheard him. But no, I remembered every word, every icy tone. There was no mistake. No room left for hope. My jaw clenched tight, my throat closing like something was stuck inside. Old memories came flooding back. For more than 2 years, I had been quietly paying all their household bills, electricity, water, internet. I never asked for thanks. I never even mentioned it. And now here I was, being labeled as the family's shame. Still shaking a little, I grabbed my phone again and opened my banking app. I scrolled through the payment history, looking at 2 straight years of monthly charges. Each month, like clockwork, nearly $400 left my account for their bills. 2 years, never once missed. At the bottom, the total stared back at me, $9,842. 17, I just sat there, staring at that number, letting the weight of it sink in. I sat there for a few seconds, not because I was shocked, but because something inside me had finally gone still. It wasn't grief, and it wasn't anger, it just felt like an empty hollow space right in the middle of my chest. Almost 10 grand. That's what I'd poured into their lives. And now I was the one branded as the family's embarrassment. As I scrolled through that long list of transactions, a question hit me, one nobody in my family had dared ask in 30 years, had Jessica ever done even half as much for our parents as I had? And it wasn't jealousy. I wasn't looking for a pat on the back or applause. It was just, if I'm the shame, then compared to what standard? I had secretly carried nearly $10,000 worth of their bills, never asking for thanks, never even bringing it up. And Jessica? Had she ever skipped something important, sacrificed, or struggled just to keep them afloat? Or was her role simply to walk in smiling, dressed nice, with a boyfriend they could brag about? I wasn't trying to keep score. The truth is, it was the first time I realized fairness was never a thing in our house. Since I was a kid, I'd grown used to standing off to the side. In family photos, I was often half hidden behind someone else, caught at the very edge of the frame, barely looking at the camera. Nobody told me to move aside, I just always did. Meanwhile, Jessica stood dead center at every birthday, graduation, even through her messy breakups. Whatever happened, the family rallied around her. But me? I can't remember the last time someone asked if I was okay. Jessica's only 2 years older than me, but the difference between us was never about age. She was the shining star, the future they bragged about whenever relatives dropped by. And me? If I came up at all, it was just a quick line, like a footnote, Ryan, oh, he's fine. I think he works in technology. I used to believe that if I just worked hard enough, stayed out of trouble, and quietly handled my responsibilities, maybe someday they'd see me. But they never did. Turns out, when you've spent your whole life invisible, no one notices when you disappear. The truth is, I started paying those bills almost 2 years ago. Electricity, water, internet, all of it. It began one afternoon when Mom called, sighing about how much living expenses had gone up, how retirement checks weren't covering things anymore. Then, in that soft, almost embarrassed voice, she said, if you could help us even a little, it'd mean a lot. Of course, I said yes. Back then, I figured it would be temporary, a couple months, maybe, just until they caught up. But the month stretched on, looking exactly the same as the one before. Nobody ever mentioned stopping. Nobody made a plan. Every so often, I'd ask, is Jessica helping out at all, Mom? She'd dodge the question. Sometimes she'd say, just cover this month, your sister will pitch in next time. Other times it was, Jessica's taking care of Dad's medical stuff, that's not easy either. I heard those excuses so many times I could have recited them in my sleep. And every time, I just smiled and let it slide, even though I knew it wasn't true. So I kept paying. Quietly. $400 a month, like clockwork. No complaints, no recognition. Not because I didn't care, but because deep down, I thought it was the right thing to do. I believed that if I stayed dependable and responsible enough, one day they'd finally notice. But now, after all that, they looked me straight in the face and told me I was the family shame. At some point, the apartment around me fell into that heavy kind of silence. I just sat there, frozen on the couch, my phone still in my hand. And I wasn't angry anymore, or even heartbroken. There was only one feeling left, enough. So I opened my banking app, scrolled down to the automatic payments, and canceled them one by one. Power. Water. Internet. I did it slowly, carefully, not out of revenge, but to hold on to the one thing they hadn't taken from me yet, my self-respect. About a week later, my phone lit up with a message from Mom. Same sweet tone as always, like nothing had happened. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just, the internet bill is due. Can you take care of it? I stared at the words for a while, then put my phone back down. Not to make some grand statement, but because that was the first thing she thought to ask, pay the bill. No, how are you? No, can we talk? Just a request for money. That silence on my end said everything. 2 weeks later, Dad tried calling. I let it ring out. A few minutes later, he left a voicemail. His voice was sharp, impatient, just like always. The power company called. This month's bill hasn't been paid. What's going on? No concern, no mention of the words he'd thrown at me that night I called about coming home for Mom's birthday. I listened, then shut the screen off and set the phone down, face first. And just like that, the silence continued. Mom's birthday came around 3 weeks after Dad told me not to come home. The party went ahead like clockwork, her favorite roast chicken, a cake from the bakery she loved, a handful of relatives sitting around the dinner table. Everything was perfect. Everything except me. That afternoon, around 4 p.m. I was sitting in my living room with a cup of coffee that had long gone cold when my phone buzzed. Mom was calling. I stared at her name on the screen for a few seconds, then set it back down. Didn't answer. Didn't even hesitate. A few minutes later, Dad called. Then Jessica. 3 calls in less than 10 minutes. I let them all go. I stayed where I was, leaned back in my chair, staring at the fogged-up glass of the window. Outside, the sky was that dull gray, not raining, just cold in that quiet way that feels like winter brushing against your doorstep. Then the messages started. Mom's came first, Ryan, the power's been shut off. The whole house is dark. Please pay the bill. I read it, feeling nothing but a calm emptiness pressing through my chest, the kind you get after years of carrying a family's weight on your own. Then Dad, no water. We can't cook. Handle it now. Then Jessica, internet's down. Guests are arriving. Fix this immediately. I glanced at the clock. 5:12 p.m. I remember it perfectly. And I knew why. I had cancelled every single payment exactly 3 weeks ago. The irony hit me hard. Just weeks earlier, my father had told me that if I dared to come home, I shouldn't call him Dad ever again. And now, right in the middle of the birthday party I wasn't welcome at, everything inside their house began shutting down one by one: power, water, internet. All gone, right when they needed it most. I didn't text back, didn't call, didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation. Instead, I just sat there with my cold cup of coffee, slowly turning it in my hands while staring out the window like I was trying to see beyond what was in front of me. And in that quiet moment, it hit me, they weren't calling because they missed me. They were calling because there was no one else left to carry their load. By 6 o'clock, my phone buzzed non-stop. But it wasn't my parents anymore. It wasn't even Jessica. It was the extended relatives, the ones who only show up for the holidays yet always feel entitled to judge. The messages came in waves. One said I was disrespectful. Another came right out with, "You embarrassed your mother in front of the whole family." A quieter, nastier one added, "Your sister was right. People like you shouldn't show up on a happy day." I read them all without replying. Not because silence meant I agreed, no. It was because I was done wasting words on people who always sided with the loudest voice instead of what was right. I was about to put my phone down when the screen lit up again. This time it was Aunt Lauren. She was the only one who had ever really trusted me. She called through some old video app that only the two of us still bothered with, because we were the only ones who cared about looking each other in the eye when it mattered. I hesitated, then finally picked up on the second ring. Her face appeared, dimly lit by the yellow glow of her kitchen light. I knew that room by heart, every crack in the wall, every squeaky cabinet. But tonight it felt different. I could hear the clinking of silverware, awkward laughter, scraps of conversation in the background. She looked at me, her eyes both warm and worried. "You're not going to pay for it, are you, Ryan?" Her voice was soft, like she was trying to make sense of what was happening. I swallowed hard, dragging up words I'd buried too long. "You know, Auntie," I said slowly, "Dad told me not to come. He said if I showed up, I shouldn't call him my father anymore." Her expression changed. She went quiet, glancing behind her like she was measuring the room. And then the noise behind her erupted. I could hear Mom's voice cutting through the chatter, "Tell him I'm ashamed of him. On this day of all days, how could he do this?" Dad's voice followed, sharp and defensive. "It's not that serious. Just a few bills. What kind of man gets petty over money?" Then another voice, "My uncle, I think. Poor Jessica, having to deal with a brother like that." Footsteps came closer, and Jessica herself appeared behind Aunt Lauren. Arms crossed, lips curled in annoyance. He even answered the call. "Mom's been crying all day. Does he even care? Seriously, no shame at all." I didn't say a word. I just sat there, listening, keeping silent because it was the only way I knew how to protect myself anymore. My thumb hovered near the end call button when suddenly another face popped into frame. A young man, clean-cut with neatly combed hair, dressed in a dark suit. He looked at me with hesitation, then offered a small, awkward smile. "Hey, boss." His voice cracked slightly, like he wasn't sure if it even belonged in that moment. I froze, pulling the phone a little closer. I hadn't expected that, not here, not tonight. The same night I'd been called too much of a shame to attend. I stared at him, and then it clicked. The face, the voice, I knew him. He was one of the new hires transferred from our southern office. We'd exchanged a couple of emails, he'd sent me a few reports. I had no idea this guy was Jessica's boyfriend, the one everyone was so desperate to impress. The kitchen behind Aunt Lauren went dead quiet. I saw her glance over her shoulder, and then the whispers started. "Wait, what did he just call Ryan?" Another voice, uncertain, "Boss? Did he say Ryan is Jessica's boyfriend's boss?" The whispers grew, overlapping like a rising tide. I didn't move. Didn't nod. Didn't deny it. Just let it hang in the air. Then the young man straightened up, looked past the camera, and spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. "In case you didn't know, I work at Pacific Tech. Mr. Ryan here is one of the company's co-founders." His words cut through the clatter like a knife. The room fell into stunned silence. Not awkward, just stunned. I pressed my lips together, gave the faintest nod of confirmation. He looked back at me, eyes wide. I answered calmly, evenly, like the line had been waiting on my tongue, "Hope your big introduction goes perfectly." Then I ended the call. That night, for the first time in a long time, I slept soundly. No tossing, no waking up in the dark with old questions circling in my head. Just peace. For the first time in years, I felt lighter. Not because I was satisfied or proud, but because for once they had been forced to see me for who I really was. The next morning, before the sun had fully made its way through the thin curtains, I reached for my phone and scrolled through my inbox like I always do. A couple of meeting reminders, some accounting notes, and then a name I didn't recognize, Hudson Kane. I opened it. The very first line hit me, "I'm sorry. I didn't know you were Jessica's brother. I've always respected you at the company." I raised an eyebrow, settled deeper into the pillow, and kept reading. Hudson wrote how shocked he was to learn about the family connection. And then, without dressing it up, he said straight out, "I didn't expect her to be like that. I'll be ending this relationship. Thank you for not putting me on the spot in front of everyone." I laid the phone on my chest, closed my eyes, and let it sink in for a moment. A few minutes later, I opened my inbox again and typed a slow, deliberate reply. Hudson, that's your choice. I don't expect anyone to stay or leave just to please me. Think it over carefully. And for the record, I never mix family with work. I hit send. That was it. No second thoughts, no lingering emotion. Some things, once made clear, don't need more words. Around 10 o'clock, I was wrapping up a meeting with department heads when my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Jessica. I stared at her name on the screen for a few seconds, then hit decline. Not out of anger, not to prove a point, just because I'd had enough of apologies that only come after everything's already broken. 5 minutes later, her message came through, I'm sorry. I didn't think Hudson would react that way. You're his boss. If you said something, he'd listen. Please, talk to him. Ask him to come back. I leaned against the hallway window, reread the words a few times, then typed my response. Hudson didn't leave because of me. He left because of how you live, how you treat people, how you dismiss what you don't understand, and how you always think a soft enough tone can bend anyone. That's on you, not me. I sent it, slipped the phone back in my pocket, and returned to work. Less than a minute later, another message lit up the screen, I know I messed up. This time I mean it. I'll change. Please believe me, just this once. I didn't answer. I read it, sat with it for a bit, and felt nothing move inside me. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood something important. The real distance between two people isn't about the apology itself, it's about when the apology comes. I quietly deleted the message and went back to my life. A week later, on a Friday afternoon, I walked in from the garage and froze. My parents were standing at my front door with small suitcases in their hands, their faces tired from traveling. I didn't ask why they'd come. I knew this wasn't a casual visit. I opened the door and let them in. No drama, no forced small talk, just a choice. I didn't want to have this conversation outside in the wind. We sat in the living room. The tea on the table was still warm. Dad spoke first, his voice quieter than usual. He apologized. Mom chimed in, saying they'd been thinking things over, that maybe they'd gone too far, that it shouldn't have reached this point. I just listened, wondering if this apology was really an ending, or the setup for something else. And sure enough, Dad's tone shifted. We're family, Ryan. And family helps each other. We raised you, we sent you to school. Everything you have now, part of it comes from us, right? I sat up a little straighter, my face calm, waiting. Then Mom added softly, as if it was the most reasonable thing in the world, if you could maybe send us about $2,000 a month. Just some support. It's not much for someone like you. I looked at them, the same parents who once shut me out of a birthday because they thought I was an embarrassment. Now they were sitting in my living room, putting a price tag on their apology. $2,000 a month, because I was their son. And in their eyes, my success meant nothing more than what I could hand over. To them, my success was a debt I owed back. When they asked for $2,000 a month, I let out a quiet chuckle, not mocking, just the kind of laugh that slips out when someone says something that makes no sense. I looked at them closely. Their eyes stayed locked on mine, waiting for me to nod, to agree. But I wasn't angry. I'd come too far to get rattled by this. I leaned back in my chair and asked evenly, what about Jessica? How much will she be contributing each month? The air in the room tightened. Dad shot a quick glance at Mom. She answered softly, her voice dipping, your sister's job, it's still unstable. And the breakup with Hudson, it's been hard on her. I nodded, not surprised. The same old excuses, dressed up to sound sympathetic, but really just deflections. I looked straight at them and said, if Jessica agrees to help with $2,000 a month, then I'll do the same. No more, no less. They stared at me in silence, trying to figure out if I meant it. I went on calmly, or, if you expect me to carry the whole amount, then I'll need it in writing. A legal agreement. When you both pass, the house belongs fully to me. Then I stopped. No pushing, no extra words, just silence while I waited to see what happened now that, for once, I was setting the terms. The quiet was heavy. Finally, Dad shot up from his chair, slammed his palm on the table, and knocked over a teacup. His shout filled the room, his chest heaving with rage. You're setting conditions for your parents? We raised you for over 20 years, and now you want to nickel and dime us? What kind of life are you even living? His voice was so loud I wouldn't have been surprised if the neighbors heard every word. I didn't flinch. I just sat still, hands resting on the chair's armrests, my eyes on him, not cold, but no longer soft. When he finally ran out of steam, I stood slowly and said, clear and low, I think you both should leave my house. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't anger. It was the plea of someone who had finally reached the edge of what respect could allow. They didn't argue. The only sound left was their bags dragging across the hardwood and the door closing quietly behind them, so much quieter than the storm they'd just left inside me. That was 2 years ago. I haven't seen them since. I never blocked their numbers, never changed my email, never cut them off completely. I just stopped reaching out and waited, to see if they'd still consider me family once the obligation was gone. In those 2 years, not a single call or message asking how I was doing. No birthday wishes, no check-ins about my health. Nothing. I used to believe one day they'd change. But now I know, not everyone changes, especially when they don't think they've done anything wrong. I still live here. I still work. My life goes on. But the difference now is simple, I'm no longer an emotional ATM, handing out pieces of myself in the name of duty. And if there's one thing this whole experience taught me, it's this: family isn't about people demanding kindness and slapping the word love on it. A real family is one where you're valued as a person, not as a wallet, not as a backup plan, not as the last resort when everything else falls apart. Before I close this chapter, let me ask you something. Was I wrong to refuse giving my parents $2,000 a month, even though they're elderly and raised me? Maybe I was too cold. Or maybe, for the first time, I was finally learning to value myself. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments. Agree or disagree, I want to hear from you. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel, there are many more real stories waiting to be told. Thanks for sticking with me till the end. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.